In 1990, Sega released the Game Gear in Japan. Came bundled with the puzzle game Columns, which was clearly Sega's answer to the Game Boy and Tetris. So a few days ago, the Game Gear celebrated the 35th anniversary, so I thought to put together a video, and you can also read more information about the Game Gear, the competitors, the modern era with customizations and mods, this and much more on my blog, RetroAffaire.com. So this is the first version of the box, PAL region version, and this is the second or later one anyway that came bundled with Sonic and the AC adapter. I really like the design of these PAL boxes, visual language of the Game Gear, quite similar to the Master System one with this grid. The Master System is on white background while this one is on the gray-silver background, very distinctive and very different from the American and Japanese regions. This is the original, quite iconic now, with this design, very curvy design, and this dark gray color, quite glossy as well. This beast could eat your 6 AA batteries in a matter of couple of hours, depending on the usage, and this was really the main weak point of the Game Gear. And here you can see the Game Gear I have with a new LCD screen display. Later I will show you the original one and why it's recommended to do this mod. It's quite easy, straightforward. Maybe not as easy as a Game Boy and Game Boy Color, but still quite doable. By the way, the Sonic game for the Game Gear and Master Systems are very different from the Mega Drive ones, but still quite good, recommended. I had the SEGA Game Gear back in the day. I think I had it in 1991. After the Game Boy, I wanted a screen that was, in colors and was with light. It was a proper LCD screen, obviously very ancient in terms of color rendering and brightness comparing to today's standards. Here it is. It's very washed out, as you can see, but back in the day this was quite nice to have, coming from a Game Boy without light at all, without colors. The disappointment was mostly on the batteries, because the Game Gear could really eat your batteries in a short time. It was quite expensive to use that many batteries, so you would end up playing with the charger, and it wasn't really handheld anymore, because you would play it at home when maybe you had your Mega Drive already. So it lost a little bit of the charm and the usefulness of being a handheld device. This is the Game Gear super wide gear lens. Seen today is quite a ridiculous accessory, but it's quite effective, it does the job. There were similar accessories also for the Game Boy, and they work. I also had the Atari Lynx back in the day. I don't remember if before or after the Game Gear, and it was a very different handheld. All three, the Game Boy, the Game Gear and the Atari Lynx are great. This is the Virtua Fighter Mini for the Kids Gear, which is the same. It was a late Japan-only rebranding of the Game Gear with the Virtua Fighter graphic all over the faceplate. Don't you miss when games came with such a beautiful, rich, colorful manual? And here it is, the Kids Gear, which is, as I said, a simply redesigned. The back is exactly the same as a plain Game Gear, and the front has this nice Virtua Fighter graphic. Also, the design itself is slightly different. This is a little bit more plain than the original Game Gear. I'm not a huge fan of the Game Gear design, both the original one and this one, to be honest. I think the Game Boy and the Atari Lynx and the PC Engine GT are nicer. Still, after all these years, it's quite iconic nevertheless. This Virtua Fighter Mini is a cute game. I mean, obviously with the 2 buttons you are quite limited, and it's mostly a port of maybe the Virtua Fighter for the Mega Drive rather than obviously the arcade or the Saturn one. This is the versus mode. And this is the story mode, which is quite interesting, especially if you can read the Japanese. You can see that when something happens in the story, then there's a fight. And you are playing as Akira here, at least in this first phase of the story. There's even some parallax effect on the foreground. Sprites are quite nice and colorful. I guess as a kid I would have liked it, you know. There weren't many fighting games on the Game Gear, so... and the SEGA Game Gear TV tuner. This was a great accessory back in the day. I had it. I remember trying to watch TV on my bed. It wasn't that easy, but you could see something. Obviously today it doesn't work anymore. There's no, analog signal anymore. But there's a AV audio video in on the Game Gear TV tuner, so I want to try it with this Hyper Keen Super Nintendo Super Famicom. I had to adapt the cable, as you can see, and yeah, you can see something. It's even worse than the original condition of the Game Gear screen. For some reasons it's really bad. It's probably the TV tuner that isn't in great condition anymore, but I'm trying Castlevania for the Super Famicom here. I could make it work a little bit better, but it's definitely not a nice experience. I tried also with the new LCD Game Gears, but for some reasons the TV tuner doesn't work at all there. Probably it's a different composite signal, so sadly it doesn't work. Another accessory, the Master Gear converter, so you could use the Sega Master System games here, the cartridge. It's basically an adapter. The Game Gear is basically a Master System with different screen resolution, so the conversion is quite straightforward. You can see here the Power Strike or Aleste, and runs very well. There were many colored variants for the Game Gears, especially in Japan, but also in America and Europe. This is a modded one by Retro 6, I believe. I bought it used anyway. It has USB-C instead of the power adapter, and again a new screen. You can also add rechargeable batteries these days if you want. But yeah, there were, I remember, the light blue version of the Game Gear, the red one, the yellow one, and my favorite is the white one, but I couldn't find it. I never found a good deal, and it's quite rare anyway. Some games, so Batman's Streets of Rage, Castle of Illusion is my favorite one. I even prefer this version, or the Master System version is the same. Then the Mega Drive one, Spider-Man is another very nice game, similar to the Master System one. Prince of Persia, Sonic obviously, Prince of Persia. Mortal Kombat. Sonic 2, the Lucky Dime Caper, very nice, Donald Duck, Shinobi, Road Rush, classic Sega games, Olympic Gold, very nice. The Mega Drive version is great, but this is also enjoyable. Paperboy, another classic. NBA Jam. As you can see, I use protector for the Game Gear games because it's all very cheap cardboards and easy to break. Land of Illusion, another one that is a great game. Alien 3, not bad. Lemmings, classic. Devilish, I don't remember that one. Chess Master. I have it also for the old Macintosh. Space Harrier. It's a shame for all those stickers, but I believe this is the American version. Super Kickoff, classic football game, amazing. Super Monaco GP, another classic by Sega. World Cup Soccer, I don't remember that either. And these are the Japanese ones. Sonic, as you can see, the packaging is much smaller. The design, the graphics are much more joyful, much more colorful. To be honest, I prefer the Japanese ones, even if for me the Game Gear is quite nostalgic as, PAL design. Puyo Puyo. I also have loose cartridges, but they are not in the video. This is a carry case. In the 90s, if you wanted to be a professional gamer, you had to have one of these, for your Game Gear or Game Boy or Atari Lynx. There were versions for everybody. That's the pack to recharge the batteries. In conclusion, the SEGA Game Gear is still today a very nice platform to collect for and has some fun games to play even today. Price-wise, it's still quite reasonable, especially comparing to some other platforms that are out of reach these days with the crazy retro games market. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as they say, I guess, and visit my blog retroaffaire.com, because there you can find articles about retro games, vintage computers, anime, manga, vintage toys, and much more, I would say. Thank you for watching.